So it's Saturday morning, and I wanted to throw up a real quick post here because Monday is a really important day in the state of Florida in dealing with the foreclosure, quote-unquote, reform legislation. The Senate committee will hear the final version of the bill before it makes its way to the Senate and House floor. Now, there's only one question that anybody needs to ask their senators or representatives, and that is, before you vote on this bill, have you talked to judges in your district about this bill? The reason why that question is so key is if a senator or representative took the time to talk to a judge in their jurisdiction, they would understand that this bill, as it exists, will do little to nothing to solve the problem that our judges face. And that's the thing that's most compelling about this argument. You know, we're stakeholders on either side, and everybody's got their interests. But the fact of the matter is that our courts really are among the most important independent stakeholders in this. You know, the interest groups, the homeowners, the banks, the condo associations, obviously have their objective interests, and so their opinions on the matter should be seen through that lens. But the fact of the matter is that our judges are independent judges, frankly, of what's going on here. And, you know, as I spend time in courtrooms day after day, the top complaint by judges is the fact that there are thousands of cases that are clogging their dockets, and the plaintiffs are not moving them forward. Now, the vast majority of these cases are not defended by any homeowner at all. They certainly don't have an attorney. Those cases are just stalled out in courtrooms. And the thing that's frustrating for judges, and frankly for myself as an attorney who's involved in this process and has a job and an obligation to support and defend our good judges, is that legislators and the media and other people that are pointing fingers point fingers at our court system, asserting that they're not doing their job properly, when in fact it's the banks and institutions that have made an absolute mockery of our court system and have clogged up our courts all across the state of Florida. Now, there's much not to like about this bill, but frankly, there's a lot of bad stuff in there for the banks and other stakeholders. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens in that committee meeting, to see how things get amended, and to see what other changes are made to the bill along the way. Now, I suspect that something's going to pass. In this age of sound bites and headlines, I suspect that the need to go back to districts and assert that you've done something about foreclosures is going to trump the more responsible need, should be need, to do something correct and to pass only legislation that really does have a positive effect on the change that you're seeking. The fact of the matter is, though, I think that the legislators are going to want to go home and tell their constituents they've done something. And frankly, constituents aren't going to be smart enough or concerned enough to actually look at what they say they've done and analyze whether it's actually accomplished any goal. So I suspect something's going to pass. They're going to go back trumpeting that they've done something with this bill, but the fact of the matter is the legislation won't do much of anything at all. Attached to this post are going to be links to all the committee members in the Senate. Encourage all of you to talk to their staff, and the one message I would say is ask them, have you spoken to a judge in your jurisdiction? And there's no way that a senator or representative could vote for this bill if they have spoken to a judge in their district, because the judge will tell them that this isn't going to do it. Now, there's another related issue that we'll get to later, and that's the big question. Why are there not more foreclosure sales going back to third-party bidders? You know, in this age of Republican market capitalism and all these other delusions, we would think that that's what we should see happening, right? At the end of every foreclosure case would be foreclosure sales, getting them out onto the market, and getting them in the hands of quote-unquote good buyers, you know, as opposed to the bad people that are living in there right now. But, you know, this is an important thing to watch going forward, is the fact that they assert they want to do something about this foreclosure problem. This bill will do absolutely nothing for it. And even those foreclosures that are going out are not going onto the market. They're going back to the banks and some strange and perverse incentives that force that. But if something has to pass, there's one piece of this legislation which would make it more palatable to the consumer community, and that is to allow homeowners who properly defend their case to be exempted out of the punitive show cause proceedings. That's the key piece. If you guys want to pass this legislation that'll deal with vacant, abandoned, and defaulted properties, fine, have at it. Don't put homeowners into this impermissible process. One other point with regard to the vacant and abandoned properties. That's one of the big problems with this legislation. It asserts that there's this problem with vacant and abandoned properties, and we need to pass legislation somehow to address this. And this is one of the great lies. That really is a lie about this legislation, that we need to pass some law to change that. The fact of the matter is that if a property is vacant or abandoned, and if the plaintiff goes through their due diligence to serve the defendants and they don't, they could have a judgment on that property in a matter of just a few months. And again, this lie that permeates the entire process, that somehow the laws as they exist will not permit banks to get their judgments done in a timely period of time, is the biggest thing that's an insult to our court system, insult to the lawyers, attorneys, and to our system of laws. Because the fact of the matter is that if the banks and institutions did their job properly, followed the existing laws, the existing rules, filed their cases based on that, they could get through these foreclosure cases in roughly the same amount of time as they ever have been. Particularly if there's a little bit of funding for case managers and other things along the way. But, that's the other big lie that permeates this entire discussion. The laws as they exist would permit the banks and institutions to get these foreclosure cases in and out through their system in a very quick period of time. The other part of the lie, and that's covered in here as well, is this absurd figure that's trotted out about how long it takes to conclude a foreclosure in the state of Florida. It's just absurd to be making public policy decisions and lawmaking decisions based upon numbers which are not correct. And this number that's quoted in the news and elsewhere about 600 days or whatever to complete a foreclosure is just not correct. And yet we continue to trumpet that. It's just, as I appended in here, the fact that we cannot be making public policy decisions and lawmaking decisions based on newspaper articles and, frankly, incorrect information. So with all that in mind, do what you're going to do up in Tallahassee. It's going to be an embarrassment to the state of Florida, embarrassment to lawmakers if something like this goes through. But we in the consumer fight will just continue to do what we do. Keep this in mind. We will have this conversation again in 2013 when this passes and nothing much happens.